the world is starting to come somewhat closer to norm, and the NBA season is coming upon us. Welcome to another edition of the Let's Debate podcast. I'm your co-host Nick Delahanty. I want to throw Kyle Delahanty right into it. Kyle, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, Nick? And what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Let's. I feel like if you guys have been listening into the Let's Debate podcast the past few episodes, you might be getting a feel of how I usually open up things. So I'm going to remind you guys that if you haven't gotten a chance to check out our previous episode, Nick discussed how the MLB and the MLBPA came to an agreement to get the 2020 MLB season underway. It was a good discussion. I think if you're a fan of baseball, I highly recommend checking that out. Check that out, head over to our website. Once you go to our website, it's going to have multiple different outlets of how you can watch or listen to any episode from the Let's Debate podcast. While doing that, head over to our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Give us a like, follow, share our content. And last but not least, the shop. Take a look. You might like a t-shirt, long sleeve sweatshirt, whatever floats your boat. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it back over to Nick to get the ball rolling.
And you're doing a great job with these promos. You save me a lot. I tell you, every week you save me a lot of trouble trying to remember everything. But again, follow us on social media. We've been posting a lot on those pages. Again, check out our store. We have a cool update for you guys that we're going to unveil sometime this week. We have a new logo for the show. If you go on our Instagram account at Delahanty Media, you could actually check it out. We had a close friend of ours wearing the gear today at Yankee Stadium. So I think that you guys will like to see that. And again, it's photoshopped, obviously, but go check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. If you look at our background, though, we are reporting live, or at least we like to think that we're live, in Disney World in Orlando, where the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex is. And that's where the NBA is going to go back and continue their season. We're both, myself and Kyle, are very excited for the start of basketball, starting to get closer to norm. And tonight's show is basically going to be breaking down the return of the NBA and what's in store for us as we await that return on July 31st.
Yeah, in our previous episode when we talked about the return, well, not really a return to play, but getting the season underway for the MLB, we were talking about how they really struggled and dropped the ball with convincing fans that they were going to have a season. And I think the NBA, along with the NHL job of coming to an agreement and giving us a month in advance, maybe 2 months in advance of excitement and anticipation for the season to get underway. And what we do know now is that the season will return on July 31st. I'll give you guys a little bit of a timeline here. So the season is going to start on July 31st. I believe it's August 25th will be the draft lottery. The season will go no further than October 12th. That's if a Game 7 of the NBA Finals is necessary. October 16th is going to be the NBA draft. October 18th is going to be the opening of NBA free agency. And then I believe the 2020 and 2021 NBA season will get underway. I believe it's December 1st. So there's going to be a lot going on in a short period of time. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. But yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, especially given that we're in a weird spot with it because we're going back to regular season games and we're going to get into the standings and all that in a little bit. But it's only 8 games per team. So you're not getting a lot of regular season. We're jumping into the playoffs very quickly. And I like how the NBA was able to incorporate some regular season games, not only to give some teams that are on the outside looking in terms of standings a chance, but it also gives these guys a chance to kind of get back into game mode before we get into really competitive playoff play, because we know how competitive and grueling the playoffs are. And in a shortened time period, it's going to be even more important these guys stay healthy and maintain their bodies as we move along.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be interesting to see how these guys stayed in shape, considering everything that has been going on. I know some guys have been posting themselves shooting baskets and training. But what we do know, along with what I said earlier, was that there's 22 of the 38 franchises being invited to Orlando. And they're going to be in a bubble because they'll be practicing, training, playing games there, and basically housing in Orlando. And there's going to be, out of the two conferences, there's going to be 13 teams from the West 9 teams from the East. And like Nick mentioned, they're going to be playing, each of the 22 teams is going to be playing 8 games each. And after those 8 games, we should know what the final playoff seeding will be. I do like the way they're going about it. I think they're giving these teams an opportunity. They could have very easily restarted the season, playoff seeding the way that it was, and no regular season games. But they're giving these teams that are just missing the cut right now an opportunity. And I'm a big fan of how it doesn't matter what conference you're in, the ninth seed, which at the end of the completion of the regular season, the ninth seeded team in either conference, 4 or fewer games out of the playoffs, they're actually going to have a play-in tournament versus the eighth seed. In order for the team to advance, the eighth seed would only need to beat the ninth seed once. The ninth seed would have to beat the eighth seed twice. So I think they're just giving these teams, they're giving deserving teams an opportunity here, and I'm a fan of the format right now. And like usual, when it comes to the playoffs, it is going to be a 7-game series for each round of the playoffs. Typical playoff format, but like Nick said, they're giving us an opportunity to watch some basketball, let themselves get back into the swing of things, and then it's going to be really, really competitive come playoff time.
And another thing to keep in mind too is the television production side of things here. You also have a situation where these TV stations and broadcast companies lost out because of games. Having the extra games and like they're saying, there's going to be a lot of games on television. It's going to bring back a lot of revenue, especially because people cannot be at the actual games. In terms of the playoffs, I agree with you in terms of liking the format. They could have easily said, okay, here's 1 through 8, here's 1 through 8 on the other side, and said, let's play some basketball, maybe have a couple exhibition games between conferences to try to get these guys going. But they didn't. They made it a little more creative, and I do like that approach from it. While we're on the subject of the teams that are in, I think we also should cover the teams that are out. And a big breaking news development came out today that the NBA is discussing a second NBA bubble, and you're going to hear that a lot tonight because they're calling Orlando the bubble for the players. For the 8 teams that didn't get invited down to Orlando, and that would be in Chicago, and that would be held, I believe, in September. Will give teams a chance to play some games. Those teams, 6 of them are from the East. You have the Hornets, the Bulls, the Knicks, the Pistons, the Hawks, the Cavs, and then you have Minnesota and Golden State in the West. Now, Kyle, my question for you is, do you like that idea of adding games for those teams?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I mentioned before, when this is up, they only have about less than 2 months before the next season starts, and if it would be a disadvantage to some of those teams if they're not back in the swing of things, like these teams that are fighting for a championship are. So I feel it was necessary to get those teams going. That did develop. Well, we did get that notification today, and it's weird because before I got that news, I really didn't even I didn't think about the other teams kind of, getting back into things. I just figured, oh, well, they're out, It's unfortunate for them. But I do like the idea. I think it's smart. My question is, do you know if any of that's going to be televised? Probably not. They're probably just going through technically training camp in a sense, I'm sure, right?
Knowing the NBA, they'll probably televise
They
it
might
because people
televise
will
it.
want to watch. I'm thinking of it as more of an NBA summer league. And
Yeah.
just hear me out on this because look at Golden State. Do you really think that they're going to send Klay Thompson, who's not healthy, Stephen Curry, Draymond Green? You really think those guys are going to play in a format like that where the games don't really matter?
Yeah, I know. I think based on the money they could probably make off of it, they probably will televise a few of the games. But like you said, it's probably going to be like summer league or almost like preseason for football. No one's sending out their star players, especially with everything going on right now. When you already know, I'm sure they'll a little bit because they do need to, start practicing before the next season starts. But overall, look, I like the idea. I think it's smart and I think it's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of fairness involved, and I credit the NBA for actually caring about all 30 teams. Like they could have easily just said, you know what, uh, we don't care about the teams that are out. They get an extended summer vacation, but they didn't. Let's jump right into the East. because I feel like this is a little bit more easy to break down. And as you can see on our screen now, I have the standings up there. Milwaukee is clearly going to be the 1 seed unless they decide not to play in those 8 games and chill out. Then you have Toronto, Boston, Miami, Indiana, and then Philly. Those teams, other than seeding, obviously, because if you look at 4 through 6, those teams could be moved up or down. Then you look at 7, 8, 9. That's where it gets interesting. You have the Nets sitting at 7. You have Orlando sitting in the 8 seed, and then you have Washington, who's currently 5 games out in the 9 seed. Now, my question to you is, out of these teams, which team has the most pressure on them? And that could include the
I
playoffs
think
too.
the most pressure. I'm sorry. I think the most pressure has got to be on Milwaukee. This is a team that has last year's MVP on it. They got to the Eastern Conference, I believe, as the 1 seed, and this year they've pretty much dominated. Their record, they have the best record in the league. So I think there's pressure on Milwaukee, and I'm going to throw in pressure on Philly for some reason. I think Philly's a team. When you look at their starting five, they have arguably one of the best starting fives in the NBA. It's talented across the board, all 5 guys. I feel like they need to make some noise because they've really been disappointing the past few years in the playoffs. But as for the other teams, I mean, you talk about the Nets. I'm a Nets fan. I have no expectations for that team right now. KD and Kyrie are out. DeAndre Jordan and Chandler, they opted to not play, which some players have opted to not play. So, yeah, I think the most pressure's got to be on Milwaukee. What about you?
I personally agree on Milwaukee. I think the ticking time bomb of Giannis's contract and the uncertainty about his long term is definitely lingering on them. And let's remember, before the break or coronavirus hit, they were 53-12. Like, they were having a great year. So there's a lot of pressure on that squad. I agree with you on Philly. I think Philly's one of those teams that they have so much talent. How are they where they are, especially in the East? You would think that they would be a lot better. But the one team that I'm going to say has the least amount of pressure, and this might sound surprising, I think Toronto. I just think that so many people are overlooking them because no Kawhi. Like, obviously, you subtract Kawhi, he's one of the best players in the league. But they're going in. Everybody's talking about Milwaukee. There's people talking about the Celtics. You hear about the Nets and their troubles. Like, people are saying they should go in and tank. But nobody talks about Toronto. Nobody cares. I guess it might be a Canada thing. I don't know. But they're a team that let's remember, they went to the NBA Finals last year. They're still a good squad. If they get the right matchups, we could be seeing them representing the East in the finals.
I'd have to agree with that. They have much pressure on them. They won the championship last year. No one's expecting them to do anything because Kawhi is gone. But at the same time, they had a really nice season, and they do have a really nice roster. Pascal Siakam has really stepped up. He was a guy who was kind of in the shadow of Kawhi last year, but I believe he was an all-star this year. So, listen, people could forget about them. People could doubt them. I wouldn't be shocked if they make a run. They're number 2 in the Eastern Conference right now. They have a nice – I don't know if they – I heard they had a pretty easy schedule this year. But once again, like, you could kind of throw that out the window with the situation we're dealing with right now, because I think all these teams are on the same playing field right now. Most of them have not played. So I just feel like no one should have any type of expectations going into this, especially with how players could be knocked out by just testing positive for COVID. It could completely change the whole landscape of the league on one given day.
You're 100% right about that. Now, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is a Nets question because they're near and dear to your heart. Do you go into Orlando and tank? Like, flat out tank?
I know they're not going to because a lot of the players that are on the active roster and have opted in to play, those are guys who fought really hard to make the playoffs last year, and no one expected them to. So I know, like, they have it in their heart to go out there and play hard and try to win. But as a fan, you're probably better off tanking. But I just don't see them doing that. I would like to see some of the younger guys, Spencer Dinwiddie, Joe Harris. Maybe not so young, but they're not the main guys on the team. Team's not built around them. I kind of like to see them continue to thrive in the playoffs because once KD and Kyrie come back next year, get some playoff experience. They have some from last year, build off that, and then you're just going to carry that into next season and get even better. So that's what I actually would like to see them do.
That's a good point. I like that. I like that approach there. And now my second question, I'm going to pull up the standings for everybody again in case you need it too. If you're looking at the standings 1 through 8 right now, and you can include Washington if you want, go from 4 down. What team would you be the least surprised if they make a finals run in 2020? That would be that you could pick the Heat, Pacers, Sixers, Nets, Magic, or Wizards.
Least surprised?
Yeah, like if one of them made a shocking run into the finals, which one would you be least surprised about?
So I mentioned them earlier. I'm going to go with the Sixers. The most they have. It's not the most pressure, but they have pressure on them. But I wouldn't be surprised if they make a run because of their talented roster, because of the playoff experience. I personally would like to see them make a run because to see Philadelphia versus Milwaukee, let's say in the Eastern Conference, Finals. So that would be nice to see. Simmons, Embiid, Horford, Tobias Harris. So yeah, I would say the Sixers.
I'm gonna go with a little bit of a surprise here, but I'm gonna go Indiana. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I just feel like when healthy, they have a couple of guys on that team that could definitely get them in the mix, and I think that they have a favorable matchup with Miami as the 4-5. I think Miami is the higher seed, but I think that's a winnable matchup, especially on neutral court. And I just think that's a team that you could see making a run. I don't know. It's just a hunch, but that would be the team I would go with.
Indiana has young, talented roster. I mean, Oladipo, Miles Turner, Sabonis. So you never know. I mean, listen, they played well without Oladipo, and he's arguably their best player, and they got things really rolling. I think it's wide open. As much as some people say it's really not, I think the playoffs across the board, East and West this year, are wide open, and that's why there's so much excitement to get the season going again, because we haven't seen that in so long. Having the Warriors in the West the past few years, and then not last year, but the years before that, having LeBron and the Cavs, it was predictable. So for the first time in a while, plus everything going on with COVID, you don't know what to expect, and you got to love that. That's how sports should be.
Oh yeah, and now shortened season, the regular season really doesn't mean much. There's no momentum going in. Yeah, you could build momentum off of 8 games, but it's not going to be as crazy. Anything can possibly happen. So that will wrap up the East, at least for now. Let's transition over to the West, and here's your standings for the West right now. Obviously, King James is on the top of the West with the Lakers. Then you have the Clippers, Nuggets, Jazz, Thunder, Rockets, and Mavs, and then you have Memphis as the 8 seed right now. They're currently 3.5 up on Portland. They're 3.5 up on New Orleans and Sacramento, and then you have San Antonio and Phoenix, who I really just think are there at this point. They're going to play their 8 games and go home. Now, my question to you is, and we talked about this before the show, I'm interested to see how the tiebreaker rule plays into effect if, say, 2 of those 3 teams tie for the 9 seed.
Yeah. So that's a good question. The only thing I could think of is how other sports are sometimes. If they have the same record, I would say they're going to look towards head-to-head, teams fared head-to-head, probably strength of schedule, maybe what their record was versus their conference, or maybe if they're in the same division, what it was in their division. That's how I'm sure they're going to come down to it. It's good that you mentioned that, because before you mentioned that, I wasn't even thinking that. But speaking of that play-in tournament, that's one of the things I'm excited for. I think that's really cool. It kind of brings you back to Little League and how that used to be, how you need to kind of knock off. Like, you have to win 2 games. They might have to win 1. So, yeah, it's a good question. And I guess we'll have to kind of wait to see, unless there's an answer out there for that already.
If you know the answer, comment below. Let us know. We've been trying to figure it out for almost an hour now, so keep us
Yeah.
updated on that if you know. Now, let's look at those teams that are battling for the 8 and 9 seed. Now, Memphis has a 3.5 game lead. They, unless they choke or have a really bad 8 game stretch, you would think that they would be representing in the 8th spot. Out of those three teams, Portland, New Orleans, and Sacramento, which team do you think has the best chance of making noise if they get into the playoffs?
I think you got to go Portland, just with Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum. They have a good roster. They even have Melo now. I know Melo didn't always step up in the postseason, I wouldn't say he didn't step up. He couldn't really dance much in the postseason, but they made the Western Conference Finals last year. So they're a team that, they may not look it right now, but I'm sure they're playoff ready. They didn't have a great season, but the West is tough. Now, the team I kind of want in is New Orleans. I like Lonzo Ball. You gotta love watching Zion play. It would be really fun to watch him, especially matching up 1-8 with the Lakers in round one. LeBron versus Zion.
You know, I'm gonna take the standings off the screen for a minute because I want to be shown here for this. Okay, so Damian Lillard ruined my franchise. Damian Lillard ruined what I thought I loved in basketball. Damian Lillard is the reason why the Oklahoma City Thunder decided to, I don't want to say rebuild because they're in the playoffs, but retool and get rid of everybody that I actually like. Now, unfortunately, Damian Lillard's not going to make the playoffs this year. Why? Because the NBA is going to find a way to get Zion Williamson in. Why? They need the revenue. Why? Because they overhyped that man. Why? Because the guy played in 19 games and he's on the cover of NBA 2K. That is ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. John Morant should be on the cover. I'm not just saying that Kobe White should be on the cover because I have his jersey on. But they want Zion in because it brings in revenue, because everybody overhypes him. He is more overhyped than LeBron was.
You think so?
100%.
I mean, listen, I don't think he's going to be LeBron by any means. I think a star, I don't think he touches LeBron long term, but I think they're pushing it with him on the cover. I don't know if they're going to rig some games here to get him into the playoffs, but I think they would like to see him get in because they know that that's ratings for sure. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I don't know if they're going to find a way to get him in. I don't know if this 2002 Western Conference Finals, I believe it was, with the Kings and the Lakers, but I do think the NBA is kind of crossing their, pick it up during those 8 games, and maybe you see a Memphis collapse to get them in.
They're going to rig it. They're going to match up with Memphis. They're going to find a way to beat him twice in a row, and he's going to match up with LeBron. It's going to be the headlines. I'm calling it now. I will post this on our social media feed when it happens because I know it's going to. I'm no genie. I don't know what's happening in the future. I'm not a fortune teller, but I can tell you this. Zion Williamson will be in the playoffs. Why? Because they've overhyped that man since his days at Duke. And a lot of people compare him talent-wise to LeBron. I compare him to Greg Oden. 7 years, he'll be out of the league. Mark my words right here. 7 years, he'll be injury-prone. The guy played in 19 games this year. He can't stay healthy. He can't shoot. I don't want to hear it that he's the next coming of the league. I'm not buying it. And not just because he went to Duke. Just because I'm not buying it.
That's a bold prediction. That's bold. All right, I have a question for you. I want to continue with the Western Conference? Because I can hold my question.
We could go with your question. Absolutely. Jump in.
All right. So, how do you think that if someone tests positive, how do you think that could affect the rest of the league? We talked about it earlier. Hypothetically speaking here, Bucks-Lakers finals. Giannis tests positive for COVID. He can't play the entire series. Does that... you know what? Actually, we'll talk about legacy. Forget the impact on the league. Legacy. How does that affect someone's legacy? Like, how would that affect LeBron's legacy if the Lakers beat the Bucks without Giannis because he goes down with COVID?
So before the show, I posed this question your way. And I was thinking about this in terms of general. So I'll attack it in 2 ways. First off, it affects the league because if one guy goes down, obviously more guys that have been in contact are susceptible to getting it. So I think it's going to be more of a spiral effect, and I think that could be an issue where the league decides to shut down. Uh, in terms of legacy, use the LeBron side of it, right? You mentioned before, and it's a really good point. The Lakers were having a great year before this happened. It wasn't like this changed overnight where they were bad and then had a good postseason or second half. If LeBron beats a Giannis-less Bucks team, yeah, it has an impact on it, obviously. But I think that legacy-wise, the championship is still going to stand. It would just be like if he got hurt. So I don't know necessarily. I know people are going to discredit it if that ever happened, and hopefully it doesn't because I'd love to see Giannis and LeBron go at it. But the people will discredit it. But honestly, I think that it would be even tougher to win a championship this year, and circumstances are going to come along. So I wouldn't take anything away from it. It will change it, obviously, because you're looking at a roster that doesn't have its best player. But a championship's a championship.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think people will discredit it, no matter really who wins here. But let's just say it's LeBron. I don't think that people should discredit a could earn this year because listen, if someone goes down with COVID, that's unfortunate, but they all signed up for this. They know that could possibly happen. Um, if we're gonna sit here and make excuses because they go down, then you might not even you might as well not even play the season because players are gonna go down with that. There's already players. I believe I'm almost positive. I saw something earlier that there's already players who have been testing positive for it and may not even show up now. So if people think that that's not going to happen in Orlando, it's probably going to happen in Orlando. I don't care if they're in bubble or not. It's probably going to happen. I mean, this virus is spreading everywhere. So all it does is take one person to spread it into another person. And we talked about this last week with the MLB. And I guess I questioned wrong before. I was talking about the impact. I meant legacy. But what I wanted to say was, how do you think that having no home court advantage for the playoffs, no fans, how do you think that players are going to fare with that? Do you think that has an impact on the season? Do you think that can benefit some players, some teams? What do you think?
Personally, I think that it has a double effect to it. I think first and foremost, I believe that the guys love having the fans there, but I think it's a benefit for opposing teams. And obviously, you don't have home and away, but you're not going into hostile environments and having to play basketball. These guys are going to be playing pickup basketball with guys they played with for years now. And you're going to hear the smack talking with the microphones on these guys, and you're going to hear the different things. It's going to add a different element. But I think that the neutral court, I think it will add to it. I think it's going to be a different feel because how do you get excited without the crowd chanting your name after hitting a big three? Or LeBron dunks on a fast break and nobody's there to fire him up. You know, there is a sense of it in regards to how it's going to play, and it's going to affect these guys, I think, because as competitors, you love, and you and I could go back to our days as athletes, you know, you love when people chant and scream when you do something good. Like, it's going to be weird.
Yeah, and I was actually watching an interview the other day about involving Shaq. And Shaq was saying, you know, he's interested in seeing what these players are going to be like because he fed off the fans. He can't even envision himself playing without fans. And these guys are going to have to pause playing in the NBA Finals in probably a rinky-dink little arena with no fans. You know, maybe they'll have some confetti falling for them and give them some type of celebration. But it's definitely not going to be the same. So, yeah, I think it – but at the same time, we might see a different kind of basketball too. The fact that it could give that pickup basketball feel, it could kind of give off the All-Star game feel of last year. You know, just this past year with the Kobe situation. And then I have another question for you. Since the season's going to be starting December 1st, so short after this season's going to end, do you think that shortened amount of time off, even though they had some time off right now, do you think that could impact next season at all? Do you think these guys might be a little run down? Do you think they might be out of shape because it's been like play, not play, play, not play.
I think that the time off was good for a lot of these guys, injury wise. It's a grind of a season, and you see these guys with this load management; they never play anyway. The shortened off season, I think, is only going to hurt the teams that go deep into the playoffs. I think
Yeah.
if you're the Lakers, it hurts with LeBron. You know, as much as we think he's invincible, he's going to be 36. It's going to come. It's going to weigh down his body. So I think that it will affect the teams that go deep into it, but I think that it's going to also help guys stay in shape because you're not going to have such a long layoff in between seasons. So you'll have a couple of weeks to regroup and refresh and get going. And they'll be closer to playing, at least being ready to play, I think, come opening day because of the shortened time span. What about you?
I feel like my process on it right now is I feel like although they had a little bit of a break here since March, and they're still going to have like a little less than 2 months of a break before that season starts, like next season, I think it could be a lot on the body too, because you're going to be playing now from, practically August until October. Let's say you go to the NBA Finals. We have no idea if you're going to game series all the way across the board. Like, we don't know. I mean, you're only playing 8 regular season games, but let's say you go 7 games each round. It's rare, but you don't know. You just really can't have expectations for this season right now. Then you're going to go into a season and play an entire season. So you're actually playing more months and more games than you typically would. These guys are used to off from mid-June until October. That's not happening now. You're practically playing. I'm not going to sit here and count the amount of months, but think about it. The next season, when's next season going to end? It's going to start in December. When does the next season? Like, when's next season's finals? So how much basketball you can, even though there's been some time off, it kind of seems pretty squashed together in a sense.
Yeah, but what I think they're going to do, and again, I'm not the scheduler in the NBA. I wish I was because I would definitely schedule a lot of good games on certain days that I can watch them. But I think they're going to spread the games out more, and I think it's going to be a shortened season in 2021. I just don't think that they're going to say it right now because I don't think they want to ruffle any feathers. I think it's going to be probably around the 60-game schedule in 2021. That'd be my best bet because then you can have an extra day or two in between games to get these guys rest. Not as many back-to-back games. So I think they will cater to it.
Yeah, I think there's a solution that, Greg Popovich and maybe even Kawhi on LA might have too, and it's called load management. I think there's going to be a lot of that, and maybe that's how they advance throughout the playoffs and get through the season because they've kind of made that in every other night.
Listen, I have to tell you, I went on my soapbox about Zion, so I'm not going to do that again tonight. I'm good for one a show, but I cannot stand the load management. I can't. I get it that you're doing it to keep these guys healthy, but in the same token, these guys, and I'll use Kawhi as an example. Do you know how much money Kawhi's making a year off the top of your head by any chance?
Yeah. No, but it's probably more than I could count.
It's a lot of money for him. If you're off an injury, if you dealt with something drastic like a Klay Thompson, yeah, I understand that. But if you're making so much money, you mean to tell me you can't play in 82 games like these guys used to? These guys used to be warriors. Now you mean to tell me we have better training, better medicine, better knowledge, better information, better technology, and these guys can't stay healthy? And you're paying. You and me go to Brooklyn, right? We go to watch Kevin Durant and the Nets play LeBron and the Lakers, but LeBron is a scratch because of load management. Me and you pay close to $400, $500 for good seats to see LeBron. That might be the last time we ever have the chance to see him. That's not fair to the fans.
And I feel like there's really no way of them getting around that because they would have to prove that this player is not injured. They could come up with any type of excuse. That's the tricky part of it. This guy could say, I have a really bad headache. I have a migraine. How are you going to prove that he doesn't? Oh, well, you're also not going to force a migraine headache. I'm not a fan of load management either. I don't think anyone is. Like I said, I'm a Nets fan. If next year Kyrie or KD are sitting out games, first of all, I'm not going to enjoy watching the game as much because I'm probably tuning in to watch you guys. If I'm attending the game, I'm going to be really ticked off because I paid to come see you now. So I just don't think it's good for the ratings of television either. If I'm sitting home on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night, whenever their primetime games are, odd days, if I'm watching and it's the Lakers and LeBron's sitting out, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not as interested in the game. It's just how it is. Those big time players need to be playing. But that, once again, that's why I love LeBron. He really doesn't do that. LeBron plays and he's 35 years old and he really doesn't make excuses. The guy's been healthy his whole career. But like you said, that's a story for another day. I'm not going to get into LeBron right now.
if if somebody told me that they had a migraine headache, you know what I'm doing? If they said they couldn't play, I'm putting on The Last Dance and I'm showing them Scottie Pippen at least trying to play through the migraine. At least he tried.
Yep.
Like you're getting a little
Or
bit of effort
a flu
out of
game.
him. Or the flu game.
Flu game. If it was real, we don't know. But if it was real,
That's another story for another day, my friend.
yeah.
But let's get
Yeah.
back into the West standings right now as we have it up on the screen. We talked about the way the standings are right now. We talked about the teams that are on the outside looking in. Who has the most pressure? We talked about it in the East. I think I know your answer, but I want to hear you say it here.
The West, and like most years, tougher than the Eastern Conference, and I think there's more talented teams in the West this year, for sure. So I feel like there's a few throw into this conversation, but I think the clear-cut choice would have to be the Lakers, having LeBron, having AD, being the number one seed. LeBron's chasing ring number 4. There's a lot of pressure on them, but a close second, if not at the top with them, if I had to choose more, you got it, because I've seen since the start of the season, a lot of people thought the Clippers were actually the favorites to win the title. Still to this day, people love what they bring to the court. And I kind of throwing in a dark horse here, the Rockets. The Rockets have just been disappointing in the playoffs. And you have Westbrook now, you have Harden, two of the best players in the game. No one's really talking about them, but I feel if they have a first-round exit, that's just not going to look good for either one of their legacies, because we've seen that a few times now from Harden and Westbrook, when Westbrook was in OKC and Harden was in Houston, or he still is, but being on Houston in general.
Yeah, I agree with you on the Lakers. I think that ring number 4 for LeBron is a big, big ring, especially with the clock ticking on his career. We don't know how much longer and how much more he has in the tank. I think that that's a clear cut. And I think the biggest thing that we lose as a fan base is a potential matchup in the West Conference Finals with the LA teams. And you hear it all the time. You're 100% right. A lot of people do love the Clippers. I think they're still a tad bit below the Lakers. I don't know. I just think that they're a tad bit below, but we all see what Kawhi could do in the playoffs. My sleeper team, I like the Rockets too. I think that they're a team that could definitely make some noise. If Harden and Westbrook get hot, I think that they have a lot to prove. I think they want to silence the critics. Those two are guys I look at. And while I'm looking at our Facebook comments, our good friend Kurt said his sleepers, the Nuggets. I have to agree with him there. You have Jokic, who I don't know if you've seen pictures, but he looks tremendous. He lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
He's in really good shape. They're a team that has a lot of talent. And honestly, the West, you could look at teams like Dallas. You have Luka and Porzingis. Oklahoma City. Who would have thought that they would be in the middle of the pack with that team? They have a great chemistry. That chemistry might carry them a little bit. And then you have Utah, another team that has a lot of talent. So the West is definitely not going to be easy. And whoever gets out of it, I think, has a clear-cut advantage in the finals regardless, because, you're looking at the East. It's not nearly as strong.
So what I meant before is I wasn't saying that Houston was my sleeper. I was saying that I, low-key think they have a lot of pressure on them because of their disappointments. Like the two of those guys, their disappointments in the playoffs. And now they're together, and they're quietly a super team. No one's really talking about them. You have two of the best players in the league, but I do agree with Kurt. I think the Nuggets are a sleeper team. They're a team no one really talks about. They have a bunch of roster. Jamal Murray is a stud. And when I think of the Nuggets, I think of the Jazz too. But the Jazz kind of have to figure out their whole situation, because Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, they're not really getting along right now. So
now, I asked the question before. I'm going to ask it again. From 4 through 9, what team would you be least surprised to see make a run to the NBA Finals?
Wow. Least surprised. I actually don't have the screen. Is Houston 5?
It's Utah's 4, Oklahoma City's 5, Houston 6, Dallas 7,
Houston.
and then we're gonna put New Orleans in at 8 because I already told you Zion's going to the playoffs. So
Wow, least surprised.
it's a tough one in the West because obviously you'd pick either the Lakers or the Clippers to go.
Yeah. You know what? I just keep saying it, but I guess I would throw Houston in the same thing. I think they have the most pressure on them aside from the Lakers and the Clippers. But I wouldn't be shocked either because they have a talented roster. Yeah, I personally like, for some reason, with Harden and Westbrook, I don't know if they're a better team than Utah or Denver. Kind of put them, I think they're a tier lower than the Clippers and Lakers. But I'll go Houston just because the two superstars they have. And yeah, I'll stick with Houston in there.
I'm going to agree with you on.
What do you
I'm going to agree with you on Houston. I was looking at it, to be honest with you, and I was going to say Utah, but again, like you mentioned, Mitchell and Gobert. Who knows what that situation's going on? Oklahoma City. As somebody who followed them a very long time, I could honestly tell you they have the worst coach in basketball. I'm making bold takes here, but I don't think he could coach a team out of the West. Houston has the most firepower. Dallas, I think, is too young. And Zion's going to get ousted by the Lakers in round 1. So it's a matter of, I think Houston has the best chance in terms of firepower to match up with one of those two teams, but we'll have to see from there. Now,
before one moment.
Yeah.
The thing with Houston that I was tripped up on is the fact that they're playing small ball now. So I'm not a big fan of that, but I still think star power, I like them better than Denver and Utah. And before we jump into it, I have a quick question because you asked me in the East. Did you ask me in the East? I think you might have asked me this for the Eastern Conference, but which team do you think has the least amount of pressure?
in the East or the West?
The West.
The least amount of pressure in the West. Honestly, I'm going to say whatever team I'm going to say Dallas because I don't think a lot of people have expectations for them. Luka's young. They're building, so playoff experience is good. And then whoever gets into the 8th seed. If it's Zion, he got into the playoffs, Portland, they're in. They had a bad regular season. So I would say one of those two teams. What about you? Who do you think has the least amount of pressure?
I think OKC.
Really?
No one expected them to be there. They're not to be there. They have how many draft picks for the next few years? And they just so happen to get, one of the better point guards in Chris Paul, and they play well this year. So I'm going to go – you could actually go with younger teams like Dallas, Memphis, New Orleans. But I think one of those teams I feel is pretty much locked in there. I got to go OKC because they're not supposed to be there. When you're not supposed to be in the play on you.
That is a very true statement. And, again, I just don't trust Billy Donovan. Watching him over the years, I just don't trust the guy. So it just doesn't add up to me. Now, as we're making predictions here, who do you ultimately see matching up in the NBA Finals if we get there? Now, let's just hope we do get there. Here, I'll put up the odds on the screen for everybody because Kyle can't see it because I'm running the other side of things here. The Lakers are the favorite, and then you have Bucks, Clippers. Rockets coming at 4. Then you have the Celtics, Raptors, and Nuggets.
Oh, man, that's tough.
How about this?
I don't want to sound...
Give me your Eastern Conference Finals and then your Western Conference Finals. And then we'll do Finals after.
Okay. So they were the 4 seed or 3 seed in the East? Do you remember?
Boston is the 3.
3, okay. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to go Milwaukee. They'll come into the Eastern Conference Finals from the top of that Eastern bracket. The lower region's tough. You know what? I'm going to go Philly.
You're going to go Philly.
And
wow.
the reason I say that is I think it's been a little disappointing in the playoffs the past few years. I love Brad Stevens. I love their roster, but they have been a little disappointing. Toronto, I'm not sold on them yet because they don't have Kawhi. I think with Philly, I know Ben Simmons has been working out with LeBron. So, he's been putting in work. and they have, like I mentioned before, arguably one of the best starting fives, talent wise in the league. So yeah, I'm gonna go Milwaukee. I won't get into the finals yet, but what's your predictions on that?
So now you're having the way it's set up now would be Philly upsetting Boston in round one.
Yeah, and then actually upsetting Toronto in round two.
Going,
So they're going on a
they're
run.
going on a run now. I have to. I'm gonna save it because we're gonna get to there. I'm going a little too far ahead. I'm gonna go Milwaukee and I'm gonna say Boston. Here's why. I think that the lack of Kawhi, and I mentioned it before, they have a good roster. I think the lack of Kawhi is going to hurt Toronto down the stretch, and I think that Boston's just at that point where they they have to get over that hump somewhat. So I'm going to say a little bit of a surprise here. I'm going to go Milwaukee and Boston. Not really much of an upset like putting Philly in there, but I just don't see Miami or Indiana making noise. But I'm gonna go with Giannis versus Brad Stevens and the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I think you can make a strong case for that. I actually just remembered they have Kemba. I love Kemba, but I'm gonna I locked in my answer, so I'm gonna stick with it. I think Milwaukee's kind of like they're in there already, in my opinion, unless something like crazy happens, if someone goes down with an injury or tests positive to COVID. But I feel like the bottom half of that Eastern bracket is kind of wide open. You got Toronto, Philly, Boston, so that should be interesting. What's your predictions for the Western Conference Finals?
The West, I think, is easy. I'm going to go with the two LA teams. I just don't think that either team, unless something drastic happens, is going to be upset. I think they're both too strong. I think in the West you have tiers. You have tier one, which is those two teams, and then tier two is a drop with everybody else. So I'm going to go with the Clippers and the Lakers. That's what I want to see. I want to see Paul George and Kawhi go up against AD and LeBron. I want to see it happen. What about you?
I have to agree with that. I think most people would agree with. I do want to see it. Like I still want to see it, but when I first saw AD get traded to the Lakers, and I saw Kawhi sign with the Clippers and Paul George get traded to the Clippers, my initial thought was I can't wait to watch this in the Western Conference Finals in LA. Just like the rivalry. Now, I'm still excited to see it. It won't be the same, but yeah, I have Lakers Clippers. What's your finals matchup?
Okay, so don't throw anything at me because your boy LeBron's going to lose in the Western Conference Finals. I'm going Clippers and I'm going Bucks. Reason why, number one, I don't like two number one seeds in there. I never feel that way unless they're both super talented, strong, and whatnot. But I think the Clippers have what it takes to knock off LeBron. LeBron's the best player in the series. I hate when people say Kawhi's better than him. Kawhi's a great player, but in this era, LeBron is number one to me. But I do think that the Clippers, especially given what the Lakers losing a couple of key guys like Avery Bradley, I think the Clippers might have the edge in terms of this type of setup. If it was the regular season and everything played out the way it was, I would go Lakers. But I think that the Clippers are going to make some noise. They're going to make an appearance in the NBA Finals and try to stop being the little brother in LA.
Definitely could happen. Clippers are set up really nicely. They're to me, I look at them as a defensive. Like I think the strongest thing about them is their defense. They have lockdown defenders. Guys like Patrick Beverly, Kawhi, Paul George, Harrell, across the board, they're just dominant defensively. And Lakers like Avery Bradley, who he kind of is that defensive guy. That's a key component to the defensive side of the ball for the Lakers. But I have to go with my guy LeBron. I have to. So I'm going to go LeBron. And then in the East, listen, I think Milwaukee versus Philly, it's going to be a good series. It's hard to go against Milwaukee the way they're playing right now. And it's hard to say that, too, because it's not really right now anymore, right in March. But Giannis is a stud. He really is a freak. I got to say Milwaukee gets in. Toronto just outplayed them last year. But, a guy like Kawhi is not in the Eastern Conference now. I'm going to go Milwaukee. So basically we're saying it's LA versus Milwaukee.
Yeah, we're basically both in agreement that Giannis is going to carry the Bucks out of the East. He's going to pull his own LeBron. a little stunt. But then you're looking at it, and you have either LA team from the West. Now, let's make this interesting here. We're gonna break down both.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if your NBA Finals comes about, what's your prediction? Who wins in how many games? And then I'll give a prediction on mine. I want you to give a prediction on my prediction. I know I'm a little contradicting here, but
Yeah. Okay. So I'm giving my prediction on what I think of my prediction so far.
yeah. So basically, we're
Like,
going
I'm
Lakers.
finishing up my
We're
prediction.
going Lakers Bucks in the finals. Who wins in how many games?
Okay. Well, before I jump into the finals, I think if it's LA versus LA Western Conference Finals, I think that's 7 games.
Oh, hands down.
But yeah, 7 games, probably the best. It'll probably be better than the finals. But I gotta go. I have to go LeBron. I don't know if he's gonna win the finals, but I gotta go. I always go with him. I'm gonna say Lakers win the championship. I think that might go 7. Like, it's very possible. I mean, Giannis versus LeBron, I'd love to see it. Yeah, I'm gonna go 7. I think it's stretching it because, like, we're throwing game 7s out like they happen all the time. It's rare to even find them in the finals. But with everything going on, the 2 powerhouse teams like that, both 1 seeds, I'm really stretching it here. I'm saying both 1 seeds. I'm saying game 7. But if that's what I think, that's what I think. What do you think?
If it's Lakers Bucks, I'm going Lakers in 6.
Okay.
I just have a feeling that LeBron has the upper edge, and I just think that the playoff experience last year helped Giannis, but I think the finals experience this year would definitely help him even more. And that Bucks team is good, but I think that the Lakers have the upper hand. I think that would be 6.
What about what's your prediction?
So no, not the Lakers. Clippers and Bucks. That's a good one. I think that's a little bit more evenly spread than a Lakers Bucks series would be. So I think 7. I think Bucks and 7.
Wow. So you got Giannis winning.
Giannis taking down Kawhi, who took him down the year before.
That'd be interesting.
Bold here.
That'd be interesting because I feel like Kawhi's actually on a better team now. You know what I'm saying? I think that this Clippers team is better than Toronto last year. For Toronto to beat them, but it's a whole other year, different teams. You know, Milwaukee's better this year than I last year. Giannis is still playing MVP caliber level basketball. I think if it's Clippers Bucks, that's tough. I feel like maybe Clippers, and the reason for that is, and I know I had LeBron beating Kawhi, but it would not shock me if Clippers win the championship because I just feel like Kawhi just finds a way. Weird enough, I just feel like he's like calm, cool, collected. He finds a way. So I think if it's Clippers Bucks, that could go either way. But I'm gonna go Clippers in 6.
Interesting.
That's my final prediction for your prediction.
See, my thing here is Giannis might be getting off of an easy series. Not easy, but maybe a 5 or 6 game series where I feel like LeBron and Kawhi are going to throw punches at each other for 7 games, and they're going to be worn out. It's going to be, like you said, that could be our NBA Finals right there. So they might get an advantage just because of energy, and you know, they could be worn out after that series. So I just think that if it's Clippers, I think the Bucks have a little bit of an advantage because the Lakers are the team that the Clippers are going after. Like, that's the team, like, that's the hierarchy there. They might take the Bucks lightly. They might be worn out after the series in general. That's why I give the Bucks a little bit of an upper hand. And I think Giannis is the second best player in the world, other than when Durant's not healthy, obviously.
You think? All right, I see where you went there.
He's 3 when Durant's on the court.
Come on. All right, so I think something to think about also, you mentioned before, but you said, because you said if it's Lakers Bucks, you think Lakers would take it, right?
Yeah, I think Lakers in 6.
And you said that because you think maybe the experience of LeBron in the finals versus Giannis's experience in the finals. But the thing is, and I mentioned it earlier, we don't know if the finals are really going to be like the finals. there isn't that crowd in front of you. You're really just playing pickup basketball. Like, I know at the end of the day, the TV broadcast is going to be hyping up. The newspaper is going to be hyping up. It's going to be all over social media and the news about the NBA Finals. But that arena is not going to. So you never know. Like that may not have an effect on them at all.
See, I made my decision based on one thing and one thing only. I think that LeBron and Giannis cancel each other out. You take playmakers. I think that whoever makes the most plays that game, obviously, is going to win that game. But the Bucks don't have anybody like Anthony Davis, and I think that's the difference maker in the series. You could say what you they have shooters on the outside that can match up with George and Kawhi and things like that, but they don't have a big man like AD. They don't have anybody who has that ability. So I think if those two teams match up, I think Davis has his way. He might arguably even be the Finals MVP in that case. I don't think they'll give it to him because LeBron will definitely get it because it's his name, but I think that he's got that potential in that type of series to be the MVP because he's that much of a difference maker.
I think if it's Lakers Bucks, we may see. It's tough because LeBron's LeBron, but you might see Giannis covering AD and AD covering Giannis if Giannis needs to play down low at any point in the series. But if it's Clippers Bucks, the reason I actually have the Clippers taking it is because, like I said, they're strong defensively, and if you could find a way to maybe double team Giannis, get some pressure on him. I'm not discrediting anyone on the Bucks, but Giannis is carrying you to where you are. So if they find a way and maybe give him some bumps and tire him out, Clippers are clearly the better team in that case. I think Clippers would take the series if they versus the Bucks there.
Either way you look at it, it's very interesting. But I do have one final question for you as we come close to the end of our show tonight. If LeBron somehow loses in the NBA Finals to Giannis or anybody in the East, how does that affect his legacy? You being a LeBron guy, I need to know your opinion on this. Does it hurt? Does it not change at all? Does it? I don't know how it would affect it.
No, I'll be honest. I mean, it's not good. It's another loss in the finals. It definitely doesn't help him. Especially since this will be the first year that he's really in the playoffs. Well, it's the first year he's in the playoffs with the Lakers. I think what would hurt more is if he lost not getting to the finals, obviously. But that's something you got to think about too. That Western Conference is not, and we mentioned it. We might see the Western Conference Finals disguised, or we might see the NBA Finals, or we might see the Western Conference Finals disguised as the NBA Finals. I don't know, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. So it's not going to be easy road, but look at it from the other side of it. If LeBron gets through the West, which is a tough conference, he beats Kawhi and the Clippers, who a lot of people think are the favorites, and he takes down Giannis, who's arguably the best player in the world right now. He's the reigning MVP. LeBron wins a title, his third title, third city to win a title in, possibly becomes the oldest MVP ever, and wins a title for LA, first time in 10 years, the year Kobe Bryant died. Like, that's a nice story. That's a really nice story. That's arguably one of the greatest seasons of all time. I'm not talking just statistics and awards, but the whole story of it and dealing with the pandemic. So that's how I've actually been looking at it. Not so much about if he loses, but if he wins, like how would that? Because then I think we look at Jordan as it's impressive for him to have won 6 championships, 6-0, 2 three-peats. But I personally, I don't care about the finals record. I think it's just as impressive for LeBron to have won and to be the key player on each team and to go to 3 different organizations and win, especially in LA. Because that goes to show it doesn't matter who's running the show, doesn't matter who the coach was, that it doesn't matter who his role players were, he was able to win. So, but we had enough LeBron Jordan talk, but I had to throw that in there.
Oh, it's credible to the situation because that's who he's chasing. That's the ghost he's been chasing his whole career. So it's definitely credible. But again, there's nobody who has more pressure on them than LeBron. And you brought up a really good point about him losing in the Western Conference. Like, if that happens, that would definitely hurt. I think losing in the finals definitely does take a damper on his legacy, especially if it's not Giannis who beats him. I think if Giannis beats him, it's a different story. It's a little bit less, but say like the Sixers or the Celtics get out of the East and they beat him, I think that'd be really ugly for his legacy. But Again, only time will tell. Hopefully, we get to that point where we do have an NBA Finals, and we'll see how it plays out. What are your final thoughts for tonight?
I mean, first of all, I enjoyed doing this because I love talking NBA. I'm excited for it to come back. Um, it's kind of like I said about the MLB. I'm going in with this. I'm going the restart of the season or return to play, I should say, with absolutely no expectations. And I think the most interesting thing is not like how the season plays out. I think it's going to be how would a big time player testing positive for COVID rest of the league or impact that team, because you could have a team that dominates a series, their main player tests positive for COVID, and it may be out a week, but you may be eliminated in that week. So it's really going to be like we have to literally take it day by day. I don't think you should have any expectations because this isn't a regular season. The possibility of someone going down with a torn ACL. This is someone literally catching a virus and not being able to play, and then unfortunately eliminated and miss out on advancing in the playoffs or championship and things like that. But what's your final thoughts on tonight?
I love talking basketball. I'm excited for it to come back. I just hope that the virus kind of dies down so we can actually have a season and continue it. I hope that the guidelines that they have in place are strong enough to keep these guys on the court. I hope it's a healthy, safe, and enjoyable time for all of us. It's going to be a different feel for sure, but it'll definitely be one that we could definitely look back on, hopefully, and say, you know what, that was really fun to watch. We really had a good time and enjoyed that, and it really sparked more interest in the NBA. And that's the main goal, is to get fans loving the game again. But again, as always, follow us on social media if you're watching tonight's show. Obviously, you found us on Facebook tonight. You get a gold star. Let's Debate Podcast. Share it with your friends. At Let's Debate Pod on Twitter. At Delahanty Media on Instagram. Again, go to our Instagram account. You'll get a little bit of a sneak peek of our new logo. I think you'll like it. I think the guy who's wearing the logo and the photoshopped image you'll like. So go check that out. We had to actually pay him a lot of money to do that. Probably about 31 million, 32 million?
It was up there. I kind of forget the number.
It was up there, but again, we're paying it off by loans, so we'll get there eventually. Again, if you like our show, you like our brand, support us by going to our store. All proceeds go to helping us build our brand. Again, follow us every Thursday night, and we'll be back with another live episode next week. Enjoy the 4th of July. It seems like 2020 has been slow, but in the same token, fast. And as always, we're going to bring you more live sports updates as they come.
Yep, guys. Enjoy the holiday.